Yeah, there's a lot to that. There's different kinds of knowledge. Like when you look at the tree of life, the invisible Sapphira called Dot between Keter and Tipperet. It's within the abyss. It's on the path of Gimel, the high priestess. It's on that path. It's the desert. This is the path people take when they eventually experience a kind of ego death. It's also called knowledge. And you could say there's two kinds of knowledge. You have serpent knowledge, which is the Sephiroth below in the sphere of Yetzirah, which corresponds to the mind and personality, 4 through 9, the Sephiroth 4 through 9. So that whole realm of Yetzirah, that's where we get a lot of our, a certain kind of knowledge, a certain kind of wisdom, a certain kind of experience with this temporal reality in life, with your personality and all that. But there's another kind of knowledge that is, you could say, within the cup. You know, when you see the tree of life in that way, there's like an opening of a cup between Hakma and Bina with Keter at the top. That's like a cup that comes down. And the thing is, Yetzirah can't have dominion there. Your mind can't have dominion there. It serves it. It doesn't necessarily serve you. It's backwards. We evolve upward. We evolve from the physical. Body serves mind. Mind serves spirit. But some people get it backwards. They think spirit serves you, and then you serve your body, and it becomes like what New Message talks about, with people getting obsessed with their cars and stuff. Instead of just using your vehicle as a vehicle, people get obsessed with their vehicle, and they get obsessed with their mind, and they think that the universe and God is sort of like a welfare state, and that, you know, you just go there and get your ticket and get your free money and get everything, and, you know, without having to learn your gifts, learn your talents, learn what the mind is really for. What is the mind really for? Is it to serve spirit, or is it just to serve itself and get obsessed with itself and serve the body? And because a lot of people have it that way, but that's backwards. It's backwards. It's good to have your body functioning very, very well. That's why I bring up the alcohol thing. You know, when you're functioning very well in terms of the physical, then your mind can function very well. I've been eating so clean for so long that if I eat something wrong, it is hard to even think, really, because my body gets all preoccupied, like, ooh, what is this? I have to try and digest this and assimilate this. What is this? And I can feel it in my mind. I can't focus on anything. It's extremely difficult to meditate. There's, you know, it's just hard. And that's why I like to stay super clean, because then my mind feels clean, and then it can be the most service. But the problem with the serpent, if it gets stuck in Yetzirah, like I talked about in the dove and serpent video, if it gets stuck in Yetzirah, it just gets caught in a state of acquisition and accumulation of what it perceives as knowledge, even though knowledge is in a way above it. Real knowledge is above it. It's more eternal. It's beyond space and time. The personality of Yetzirah is kind of limited. It is very limited. It needs to, there needs to be an undergoing of a much more expanded nature when going on that vertical path of Gimel, going from Tipperet to Keter, and getting into that chalice, the chalice of the tree of life, where the dove of spirit pours in. You have to be in service to that. That's the whole thing, in service. It's not your slave. It doesn't come down here in order to service you. You have guides on that path. You have teachers on that path. You have a spiritual family on that path. And they may radiate information to you. They may give you inspiration. They may give you all kinds of gifts. And this is actually shown like in the High Priestess card in the Thoth deck, where you see like reverberations coming from the Keter, the crown. It's kind of like it's like reverberations, like a frequency coming off of it. And this frequency fills the net of life, which has certain gifts in it, certain things that kind of crystallize. Even though at the bottom of the cards you see crystals and fruits and all these things, and you see Artemis, the huntress, with the bow and arrow in her lap. She's surrounded by like a net, and it's like this net is catching the light. Now you could say that net is what's getting very close to the Yetzirah, because it's further down. When you get further up, you escape the net of the Maya, because within the Maya you can find truth. There can be truth in it. It just needs to be calibrated correctly. That's the thing. That's the only thing. If it's not calibrated correctly, then that true knowledge doesn't even exist. That true knowledge is alien. It's truly alien. There are beings in the universe and even people on this planet that they seem to have been almost totally cut off from that knowledge. And they're not even interested in attaining it. They want to be lords of the lower spheres. And they will use their own brand of knowledge in order to keep people enslaved there. Because once you achieve real knowledge, it has a way, like I talk about in the dove and the serpent video, it has a way of transcending a lot of limitation, certain limitations. You're always going to be in certain limitation being alive. You can't escape that. But when you become allies with a higher power, all kinds of things can be done. All kinds of things can be done. But it's difficult. It's a difficult path, and it's difficult for a reason, like that kind of attainment isn't something you just like again, like it talks about in New Message, it isn't a welfare state. You don't just walk up to the window and be like, get your enlightenment ticket, and then just go sit down and wait to be enlightened or something. It's why it's a desert. That's why it's portrayed as a desert. The Hebrew letter Gimel, which corresponds to that vertical path, means camel. And getting on that camel and going into the desert, you need like more patience than you possibly ever mustered. You need tenacity. You need to understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. And don't waver. Don't waver. Wavering, see, here's the thing. You have left and right on the tree of life. You have left and right with human design and the body graph and everything. But think of it like this. When you get on a vertical path and you're going towards something, the closer you get, the higher you get, the more trouble you're going to have if you waver. When you're down in Yetzirah, it's like you're wavering all the time. And in fact, it's normal to do so because you're deducing things. This is life. You're using left and right all the time. You can't escape it. Looking at extremes, experiencing extremes of emotion, like with Netzach, milling about with other people, with Hod, all the philosophical things, knowledge that you can understand about the world with Hesed, the kind of competitive nature of things with Gibura, that exists. But when you get on the vertical path, and you get on that camel, so to speak, and you start going up, you may start having experiences. You may start having really profound spiritual experiences. And the further you go, the more dangerous it is to get flying, to start flying either left or right. You'll feel it even more. It's like going through the eye of the needle, like that saying I brought up in The Dove and the Serpent. It is far easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter heaven. You think of riches, you think of Tipperet, Yetzirah. It could be physical riches, but it can also be like mental riches, like things that you grasp, things that you apprehend, right? But there's a different kind of receiving. There's a different kind of receiving when you get further up. And wavering on that path, we're all going through the eye of a needle. We are all going through that eye of the needle. And that is a good kind of saying. It is far easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter heaven. We are being initiated through that needle. And it's difficult. It's not easy. It's definitely not easy. It's something that's, you can get pretty far on there, and if you fall off that camel, or if you get tempted by something, I mean, this is what Steps to Knowledge is showing me. Taking the steps to knowledge, which I recommend doing. I'll go ahead and post it in the chat if you're not familiar with it. Like Steps to Knowledge, all the information at newmessage.org. Steps to Knowledge will help get you on that vertical path through steps for this whole year program. And you learn from mistakes. You learn from wavering. It teaches you things about your wavering. And it teaches you how important it is to not judge yourself, because you're not in a position to judge. Not really. It might seem hard sometimes, like, oh, then you kind of beat yourself over the head with the guilt stick, or self-loathing and stuff like that. But it's teaching you, like, you're really not in the position to do that, because you can't see the future. You don't know where this is going. Not really. You don't really know where this is going. So you have to have compassion for yourself and others as much as you can. But if you fall off the camel, so to speak, and you're going over here, you'll feel it. You may have more powerful guides and teachers that help get you back on the path, but you feel and understand what that waver was about, what that getting shot over here was about. What exactly is the Askara and the Maya? The Maya is the illusion of your separateness, and it's also very closely connected to your mind and how your mind is functioning. The mind is either serving spirit, which is the correct mode of operation. But if it's not, then it's just further creating division and separation and suffering and all kinds of crazy stuff. But it's a process of evolution. It's a process of understanding. Because even people that are stuck in Yetzirah and are doing certain kinds of self-serving kind of things, you can't be quick to judge those people, because you don't know the process of evolution of what's going on with all of this. There's an interface between the spirit and the physical, and your separated personality, what appears to be separate, but you are actually in infinite relationship with the universe. It's just that we don't feel like it. We feel abandoned. But to come into a deeper relationship with the forces that are here to support you, you support them. There's a lot of reciprocity with it. In order to get that, you got to recalibrate your mind to serve spirit and even the body. People need to heal their bodies. You cannot, it's really hard to recalibrate if you're doing drugs and eating terribly and all kinds of things. I remember when I first started really getting clean, it was like I was thinking for the first time in my entire life. And that is saying a lot. It is really, really saying a lot. Because I was reading a bunch of stuff already. I thought I was already thinking about so many things, but when I started really getting clean, the next thing you know, oh my goodness, I can juggle 10 times more information, and I feel very streamlined and I feel very free. Like that's why having your body clean is so important. Because if you got a dirty body, you're going to have a dirty mind, so to speak, and it's not going to be able to serve as well as it could. They kind of all go together, and it can be difficult, but even if you are really clean like me, there's still stuff going on within the sphere of Yetzirah, sphere of the mind. Allies of Humanity, a new message, talks about how there's a lot of manipulation going on within that in order to what? Get people off the vertical path. They want to get you off the vertical path. And they will do anything to get you off of it. There could be all kinds of things going on there. Making certain frequencies within your being very sensitive. There's all kinds of things. But like this is connected to shamanism as well. When people get on that vertical path and they're connected to very compassionate beings, and they become a vehicle for that compassion to come through, amazing healing can happen. Things that can seem miraculous. Things that seem to, again, transcend boundaries. But when you're stuck in Yetzirah and you get convinced of certain things, there's so much stuff going on with Yetzirah. You could say there's a lot of political stuff. There's a lot of economic stuff. There's a lot of, oh, look, he's rich, he's poor. There's this, there's that. There's all this separation and judging and labeling of things. I feel good. I feel bad. Everything. All this stuff is kind of accounted for in Yetzirah, of which Tipperet is the hub of that. Now, Tipperet, it is so important for it to be in alignment with the higher. If it's not, it's just basically seeking power and pleasure and security in ways that are just, we've been stuck there for a long time. But when the mind understands its true purpose, it can be truly liberated. I don't want to throw you off track. Ignore if you want, but have you heard of the channel? He has some similar topics, mainly symbolism. I think he posted a video of yours. But I was wondering your opinion because I find your channel somewhat similar. No, I've never heard of it. I probably came across it, but I actually don't watch other people talk about anything. You could say the reason I don't is because that's a serious Yetzira sensitivity of mine, like with how sensitive I am to information. Like I'm already dealing with so much, and to go throwing myself into other people's ideas and ways of presenting and stuff like that over and over, it throws me way off track, like it does. I'm not saying you're throwing me off track. I'm saying if I go and do that, it'll throw me way off track, getting all wrapped up in other people's stuff and their interpretations and their teachings and all of that. Like, I need to keep things very, very pure. I'm not saying everybody else is impure, but I just need to keep things very, very pure for me with how I'm doing things. Yeah, there's way too much out there, man. There's way too much. What am I supposed to do? Go familiarize myself with everything? You know how many occultists there are on YouTube? Some of them are like, it's just like, okay, I'll just leave that. I just leave that. Compassion is a tough thing, man, because Yetzira is so enticing. It really is. Because you want to judge things. You want to judge things and put everything in the right order. And keep yourself. Yeah, you want to maintain yourself emotionally. You want to maintain yourself with your relationships. You want to maintain yourself in terms of competitive drives, in terms of worldly knowledge with Hesed. But there is something else that is really important. That compassion, that real knowledge, that deeper knowledge that comes in and that reminds you of your ancient home, that reminds you of your reality beyond this temporal existence. It reminds you of your home beyond it. Names are weird. But there's a part of you that's beyond just your name or where you're from and the cultural elements and all of that. Yeah, there's some deeper stuff I could talk about that, but I'll just leave it at that. With the Kabbalistic tree of life, and yeah, there's some interesting things about that. You could say the gate, quote unquote, the gate of Yetzira is the path of Tet, the path of Leo. The path of Leo from Hesed to Gibura. Strength, lust. It's also called lust as well. Now, like I've said in a couple previous videos, there's a time and a place for that. There's a time and a place for that. But the opposite of Leo, being Aquarius, I've talked a lot about that. And I'll just leave it at that. So that's actually a very fitting topic that you brought up, Cornwallis. Cornwallis truffle butter. Because I myself am actually experiencing that. Doing the steps to knowledge. It can be difficult sometimes when you're on that vertical path and you're learning how to fully integrate yourself on that vertical path as much as you can. There is stuff going on within the lower spheres that is very tempting and very seductive and very enticing and very convincing. And if you have a sharp mind, it can make it even worse. So, I'm learning and I'm not giving up. I'm doing the best I can. I'm doing the very best I can. Sometimes you're giving gifts, and that's what it's all about. You have to be open to receive your gifts so that you can then give these gifts to others. But sometimes you're not open to receiving, right? You might be blocked at the top of Yetzirah by the path of Leo. It might be blocking. It might be kind of holding you here in this sphere of lust, power, influence, needing pleasure, needing to feel secure in the lower spheres. Now, like I keep saying, there's a place for that. It's an element of our existence that's really important. But a part of us is so stuck on it. So stuck on it. It thinks you're going to lose your mind, quote unquote, if you get beyond it. That's its main tactic. Other than trying to be really convincing and enticing and seductive, it's all just trying to distract you. It doesn't want you to go up. And in a way, it's not your fault. It's nobody's fault. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It's something we've all inherited. People talking about everybody else's ego as if they don't have one. It's funny because when you think of Leo and the fifth house of astrology, it has a lot to do with the home. Your temporal home. But you also have an ancient home. An ancient home that is beyond just your temporal home. Like I said in the very, very beginning, think of the deepest familiarity you can imagine. That is even beyond your imagination in many ways. It's not about you imagining. It's about the deepest familiarity and knowledge hitting you right and everything opening up to where it's like coming awake. That is a road to your ancient home. You come from that place. All this separation and your current life and your name and stuff, that's temporary. Of course, it's important, but you have to calibrate it in the right way. You have to calibrate it to your true soul, to your true purpose. But there's a lot of nets being thrown over that world of Yetzirah. Distractions, bells and whistles, things keeping us stuck in separation, concepts, movements, and it's really hard to not get stuck there when you're human. It's almost impossible. Almost impossible. I was reading this book. I was reading this little book Crowley wrote today. And here's what it says in the beginning. Of all the graces that cluster about the throne of Venus, the most timid and elusive is that maiden whom mortals call happiness. None is so eagerly pursued. None is so hard to win. Indeed, only the saints and martyrs, unknown usually to their fellow men, have made her theirs. and they have attained her by burning out the ego sense in themselves with a white-hot steel of meditation, by dissolving themselves in that divine ocean of consciousness whose foam is the passionless and perfect bliss. And people, what are people trying to find with happiness? They're in the lower spheres generally, but it always burns out. That happiness always burns out unless and until you burn out your ego sense. But what is everybody supposed to do? Meditate every day? Is that feasible? We have billions of people on the planet. Is everybody going to do that? No. So how do we get the calibration right? How do we get the order of things correct, right? Steps to knowledge is one of the best ways I can recommend. It does require meditation. There are meditation practices in it. There's contemplation practices in it, but it's really about aligning yourself and getting you progressively. It's about getting you progressively out of the slavery of the lower mind, out of just being so left and right. And you see this like within ancient architecture too, of like it's called the triptych. The triptych. You have 3 doors, one big door in the middle, and 2 small doors on the side. Now, this path is about aligning yourself on that middle door, that middle path, and not getting lost over here, you know? I mean, because with the path that humanity is on right now, there are a lot of manipulative, seductive forces that are like on each side of that central path, like really just trying to tempt you. Come over here, come over here. No, come over here. No, don't go that way. Do it. You know? Ooh, look it over here. No, look it over there. And maintaining is a tough thing, but that's what Steps to Knowledge is about. It's about getting you situated in order to even take the first step on that vertical path. You know, like you got to see things for what they are, and it really helps fortify you. It really helps fortify you. Sort of, but not really. To Alex, is it comparable to the 1 year manual or modern magic? Sort of, but not really, because you're not performing ritual magic, which is, or you know, things like that. That's been with us for a very long time, and it can be good to, you know, align yourself with that. But there, you could say a part of it is still within the lower spheres, one could say, because there are just so many concepts and steps and a use of linear time that is almost too top heavy. We're approaching the end of history as we've known it. History, human history as we've known it, is about to totally flip. And when you look at spiritual practice, how it's been evolving for so long, it's so rigid and it requires so much discipline. Now that's a good thing. I totally respect anybody and everybody who's maintained the traditions and have created vessels for it to be transported into the future intact. That's been so important. So many people have done this in so many different ways. Keeping sacred knowledge safe. I mean, even during the library burnings thousands of years ago with the Library of Alexandria and everything, people had to hide sacred texts in caves and stuff. That's why we found the Dead Sea Scrolls in that cave. And like the Nag Hammadi texts and certain other things that had to be like hidden, encoded. This is what happened to the tarot. They had to turn the tarot into like a card game. The tarot is actually very ancient. You know, you hear some scholars try to talk about how, no, it was just invented in the 1600s or something. Like, no. It goes way back, way back. And it's connected to astrology, Kabbalah, Egypt. You could read a book like Tony Bushby's Secret in the Bible. He has a lot of evidence for that. A lot of fascinating things going on in that book. But this new revelation of the new message and allies of humanity, it's helping prepare us for what's actually happening and what's coming with our technological advancement and where this is propelling us. It's propelling us into a greater community reality. That's the way it's talked about in Allies of Humanity and the new message. Greater community reality. So that's what Aquarius is, or Leo self, in understanding a greater community reality. Not just in terms of human, not necessarily just in terms of human. And in order to be properly aligned with that, you have to be open to receive your true gifts from your ancient home. That is beyond just your temporal reality. The temporal reality can no longer hold primacy. It's important, it has its place. I'm not saying we need to delete it. Everything works together, okay? Everything works together. So getting in touch with this other side and getting out of just the temporal, just the lower, and understanding what your real gifts are, being able to actually receive them. That's what the steps to knowledge really helps you with. And certain philosophers have touched on the importance of that. You could say, like Heidegger, what Heidegger tried to do with his work. I'm not a Heideggerian in terms of like being super scholarly about it, but I know enough. I've read his work, enough of it to get a good idea. I've seen really learned people talk a lot about him, and it really resonates with me. And you could say that that's what Heidegger was trying to do. Like Jonathan Bowden said, Heidegger went into the Black Forest of Germany to basically prove the existence of God. That's when he wrote Being and Time. He went there to basically try and prove the existence of God, even though he's doing it in a very meticulous manner, looking at the nature of words, how we use words, the history of philosophy, where it may have gone off track. And Heidegger is saying it went off track very, very close to the beginning of Western philosophical tradition with Plato and Aristotle. He's saying that pretty much everything after that, everything with Plato and Aristotle, not everything with them, but it's where he calls it the fall. There was like a fall. There was, when you look at pre-Socratics, there is a closeness and a very deeply poetic, but also very deeply logos-oriented gnosis that was so central. And people were like in a state of gnosis, and the way they were writing was very impactful, very powerful. But then the way Heidegger talks about it, it's like there was a fall. It's like there was a fall, and we got obsessed with concepts, and we started to become obsessed with concepts and ideas and ways of structuring knowledge, that it lost its profound simplicity that could take you to like core knowledge. And I think with Heidegger's work, that's what he was trying to get down to, like getting on that vertical path, truly getting on it so that you can actually guide yourself into a truly religious experience and truly understand what those lower spheres are about. He was doing it in his own way. You know, he's not talking about Kabbalah and astrology and all of this. But what he was trying to do is deconstruct our mental concepts, like truly deconstruct them to see what's left. Kind of like the way Nietzsche would philosophize, like take things apart, see what holds up to scrutiny kind of thing. Somebody said that concerning Western philosophy, Nietzsche was the executioner and Heidegger was the undertaker. So Nietzsche was the executioner. He just took a hammer to everything. Heidegger meticulously buried it and showed people that, you know, there was a lot wrong in terms of how we're thinking. Literally, if you think you're going to philosophize about something, how are you thinking to begin with? You got to start like from the very beginning, like even before the beginning. You got to start, you know, the beginning. What do you even mean by the word thought or being or anything? Are you even thinking, or do you just think that you think? Or are you thinking that you think that you think? You know, it can seem kind of convoluted, but the reason he's takes it so seriously is to get you on that middle path and to get you out of this basically worshiping of just ideas and concepts that have been bandied about, splitting existence up into categories chronically, you know. But steps to knowledge, it does that. It basically does that. It starts out the very beginning. Don't go ahead, don't skip ahead. Do not skip ahead in steps to knowledge. You have to do it step by step every day. It's a whole year of every day needing to meditate on certain things and open yourself up to certain concepts. And some of it isn't even concepts. It's about direct experience. Without experience, you're just living in idea land. You know, if you're not having direct experience, you're in idea land. And it starts out like you have to admit you don't know. Now, a lot of people are philosophizing, thinking they know. That's where a lot of philosophy can actually come from. And wanting everything to be correct and everything. You know, this is part of the reason why I don't like human design and how people are teaching human design, because they're so obsessed with correctness. And I just see this as like everything Heidegger was critiquing, because people think they know. They think they already know, and they're assuming so much. And there's a lot of arrogance in it. So what I like with the steps to knowledge is that you really have to admit that you do not know. You're without knowledge. You are totally without knowledge. Knowledge will be shown to you progressively if you follow these steps, if you truly commit to them. And it's a kind of knowledge that is different than what you think of as knowledge, because when people think of knowledge, they think of just data collection and information. No, true knowledge is more connected to the word gnosis. When somebody is in gnosis and they're experiencing gnosis. Kind of like what the pre-Socratics were very in touch with. But we're in a new age. We are entering a new age. It is happening right now. Like, this is why this opening is for us to pass through. And it's not an easy thing. It's not like, oh look, a portal. I'll just jump through it and be living in bliss and all that. Like, no, it's a learning process. There's so much we have to learn about our ancestral traumas, things we've inherited, all kinds of stuff, and recalibrating our being and our mind into a vertical alignment and not getting distracted by everything that wants to keep us in meta contrast. That meta contrast is being used against us so expertly, man. There's wedges being driven all over the place between men and women, between left and right, between, politically, between races, between countries. There are forces out there that they just keep driving wedges, more and more wedges. It's enticing for the mind, especially with intellectuals. Sometimes when I look at intellectuals, even people whose work I respect, they can be the most lost in all of this because they're so busy trying to freaking figure out all these pieces and what they mean and, winners and losers and all that. It's very seductive. It's very seductive what's happening. Just watched your Mars, Uranus, Aquarius video. Really curious about Aquarius and the Saturn Capricorn period right now. I have my Saturn return coming up at 1 degree Aquarius. And I feel like I'm really getting whipped into shape. Yeah. When Saturn gets in 1 degree Aquarius. Oh, that's interesting. I like that. I like that because Saturn may bring a kind of foundational experience of the coming Aquarian consciousness when it actually enters Aquarius. Same thing with Pluto, but when Pluto enters Aquarius, that's going to be a big thing because Pluto's been teaching us a whole lot with this slow transition through Capricorn. I mean, right when Pluto entered Capricorn, we had the economic crash in 2008. I mean, and that was an astrological synchronicity all on its own. Right when Pluto entered Capricorn, boom, because Capricorn is about power. You know, money, bigwigs, stuff like that. A lot of corruption. And what did we see? Like Pluto shining a bright light in a dark room where there may have been shenanigans going on. That's what Pluto does. Now, Pluto shining a bright light in the dark rooms of Capricorn, we've seen a lot of that, 2008, and what's really happened? I mean, there's been a lot of amazing alternative research and conspiracy research taking place with all of this. People really getting down into it, people really digging in, like really good researchers, people who are really good. And that stuff really started. I mean, I know there was a lot of research taking place before that, but you could say that when Pluto entered Capricorn, it was like, now we're really going to dig in. People want the truth. We're going to shine a light into the darkest of the dark areas. People really need to, become aware of these power structures and all of that. But sometimes that could actually be used against us, again, like to throw us into either the left or the right. You get weird things taking place like a walk on Wall Street. A lot of that seemed like a psyop. There was a lot of weird stuff going on with that. But when Pluto is done with this trek through Capricorn and it gets into Aquarius, where we get to see a bright light being shown in Aquarius. What's that going to be like? What kind of darkness could be in Aquarius? I think it has to do with allegiance. Allegiance. Who you are truly in allegiance with, psychically, emotionally. Okay, we're not just talking about big wigs and people in positions of power with lots of money who are trying to control things and just trying to look out for themselves and all that. We're talking about a different kind of influence. A different kind of influence that may be off-world. But you also have allies. They're not coming here physically. You have allies in the universe, but they're not coming here physically. They're not trying to save us. They're not going to come here and save us. There are beings coming here and posing as saviors. They are posing as saviors, but it is so premature. Humanity is not mature enough in any way to be connecting with off-world beings in that way. We're not mature enough yet. That's why you have this premature stuff coming in with these other beings who just want to take advantage. And I think that's a big part of what may be shown when Pluto enters Aquarius. Like, we're going to be shown something. And it's really fascinating to me how, in human design, we have this 2027 date, which is basically a time of transition, but it's a very interesting one. It's 2027 is the year that Pluto will have made one full revolution since the discovery of Uranus. Now that's actually significant. That's actually highly significant. It has a lot to do with healing our ancestral trauma, understanding a bigger reality, and that when Uranus was discovered in 1781, this was right around the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Now, a lot of our technological advancement is what this is all about. And Uranus is a big part of that. It's the stepping stone of that. It's kind of like the stepping stone into a greater community awareness. But we capitalize on that for purely personal gain. They're not trying to spiritually elevate us. They're not. You can listen to Bashar and certain other channelers and all that. They're even influencing people spiritually. A lot of the New Age oddness is coming out of this influence. That's what Allies of Humanity, a New Message, talks about. And you can readily see it. It's very easy. But when Pluto has made one full revolution since the discovery of Uranus, it'll be 2027. And this is going to be a major transition point that we have to prepare for. You don't just want to walk into this as if it's nothing. This is everything. It's everything. It's history coming to an end, really. Human history, as we've known it, coming to an end. And your consciousness and your awareness needs to be prepared for that. You don't just walk into this like, oh yeah, I'll be taken care of. The universe is a giant baby crib, and everything is here to take care of me. And no, you got to be really discerning and understand how complicated things can be on that level. It isn't just the universe waiting to kiss your ass because we're going to evolve into light beings and join the Galactic Federation of Light and all that shit. Most of that stuff is a big fat deception. A lot of people are getting ideas implanted into their heads. Some of the most zealous people are having ideas implanted in their head. Some people are literally channeling these beings who are pretending to be other beings. But yeah, you gotta get wise to that. What's your true allegiance? Some people are going to be pretending that they're entering the age of Aquarius when really they're just stuck in sensationalism. They're really just being locked within Leo, if you want to look at it like that. They're being locked within it. It has its place. There's nothing wrong with it, but they're being locked within it. You know, there's nothing wrong with enjoying the good things in life, but if that's all that matters, you never hear Abraham Hicks talk about real spirituality. Never, ever, 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 ever. It's like endless titillation about pleasure and feeling pleasure and gaining pleasure and getting things, how to get in the right mindset in order to get shit. It's not spirituality, man. In fact, when you think about it, it can seem quite dark, what's really behind that. It's quite manipulative, actually. But it's so enticing because humanity is ripe for it. We're really kind of naive right now with what we're entering, which is why this information is so important that I've been sharing over the past while. So 2027, Pluto has made one full revolution since the discovery of Uranus. There's a lot of ancestral healing and ancestral trauma that needs to get worked out, but there's also a deeper alignment. It's about recalibrating your mind to its proper role. Now, what's fascinating to me is that there was a Bashar talk that he gave last year, I think, where he said, the title of the talk was like 2027, the Nexus, or something like this. And he said that will be the year of contact for them, for the grays and the hybrids that are really going to come out right in the open. That's going to be the year they really try to do it, according to Bashar. Think about that. On 2027 is because there's 40-year increments. 40 years before 2027 was 1987? Yeah, 1987. And then 40 years before that was 1947. So he's saying that these are pivotal years because in 1947 you had the Roswell crash. In 1987 you had this harmonic convergence that people were talking about. It's also the year that Ra got human design. Ra received human design in 1987. Then another 40 years after that is 2027. Now, 2027 is an important year, both in terms of what Bashar is saying with these 40-year increments of major events happening that are, connected to human advancement, so to speak. But what they're trying to do is capitalize on it. They are desperately trying to get a foothold in our own evolutionary process. That's what the hybrid agenda is about. That's what the pacification program is about, that Allies of Humanity keeps bringing up. This is what all the manipulation is about. It's why they're trying to ensconce themselves in different governments. Some of the hybrids are actually here and acting as advisors for leaders. People that are easily led by promises of power, promises of influence, promises of wealth. Some of them are even given promises of world domination. Now, this is an issue because this is actually happening. And I think, with Saturn entering Aquarius and Pluto entering Aquarius, it's helping us prep us up for 2027 when we really may be entering an age of Aquarius, but we got to get really savvy about things. We can't just think that the universe is here to kiss our ass. There are beings out there that are quite manipulative and that are really prematurely contacting us. Our allies, your spiritual family, beings that would be very aligned with you, beings that would be your friend and that may come here far in the future when we've matured, they're not looking to manipulate. They're not looking to get a foothold here. They're not looking for any of that. They are free nations, and they've had to fight for it. From what? The exact same thing that's happening to us. They call them the collectives, these collective forces that always try to take advantage of civilizations that are becoming more technologically advanced. When they get to a certain point, they create an infrastructure that can be utilized and hijacked. That can create an interface with their own technology so that they can interact with this world. They don't want to destroy humanity. They want to employ humanity. Employ. And the way they do that is through a lot of persuasion, a lot of manipulation, a lot of hybridization, trying to bond with us genetically, trying to bond with us emotionally, doing all kinds of things. People who would be outspoken against this kind of thing, people who would be warriors and try to warn people about this, they are being mentally tortured. They're being messed with. They're trying to be thrown off track. Like I was talking about with the vertical path, there are so many bells and whistles on either side. If somebody, and a lot of their manipulation is coming through the commercial side of things, not just with government leaders, but commercial leaders, people who have sickening amounts of money and like really sickening levels of clout in the world of commerce. These people are being contacted prematurely. These people are being advised by hybrids. These people are being promised power, wealth, global domination, leverage in every way. They're being offered technology. They're being offered very advanced technology. But to these beings, this technology is just trinkets. This is just throwaway technology. Like, here, have a little bit of this. This will bring them in. This is not so difficult to comprehend. The universe out there operates just like it does on Earth, except it's a much broader, vaster nature of it. There are amazing things out there, like Allies and New Message talks about, There are very advanced beings spiritually. Some of them are helping us, but they don't do it by coming here physically. They operate in a whole other way, this vertical that I keep talking about. It's not something to play with. It's not something to downplay as if it's nothing. You could almost think of it like a satellite dish. Like you can know things and communicate things without actually having to go to a place physically. You don't actually have to go to a place. You have soul technology that outstrips anything that could be given to you physically in terms of technology. If we can get to that place, if you're truly open to knowledge that's both without you and within you, and get that harmony going, and get on that vertical path, there's no telling the sheer level of gnosis you will be connected to. Not just with the human family, but your spiritual family beyond this solar system. You do have ancient relationships that stretch beyond just your temporal existence here with other beings. Now, if you were to go to their actual physical planets, it might seem incomprehensible. Their culture, their language, their form, how they look, but there's still knowledge within them. They may have a tradition of knowledge that puts them on this vertical path to where they can communicate with you very, very easily. Now, this is a fascinating thing that's discussed in the new message. It's the one thing that can get translated across all civilizations. No matter what kind of intelligent life form it is, they can communicate to each other if they are vertically integrated, if they have a strong connection to this knowledge. It's not that difficult because things are transparent on that level. Things are transparent. There's no deception. There's no manipulation. All right? There's none of that. There's instant knowing. There's gnosis. Now, there is universal gnosis that you can get in touch with. You are informing them. They are informing you. You're not hiding anything. But you have to be spiritually aligned to even be there. These other beings, they don't have that. They don't have that connection. And in fact, they're very suspicious of it. They try to manipulate it. They try to mess with it. Why? Because it's very powerful. It actually has a way of seeing through all of their shenanigans. Because they can be very powerful in terms of the mental sphere. They can be very powerful in terms of their, you could call it Yetzirah consciousness. Very powerful. The way they exert their mental influence, the way they can overcome people, but they're not spiritually connected. So everything they do is about persuasion, manipulation, trying to gain allegiances, trying to gain leverage and domination over the mental environment. That's all they do. Because get through to them. Don't think you could ever get through to these beings. It warns against this. It really warns against this. Don't think you're going to have allies that are grays, or any other beings that are coming here prematurely. Any beings that are here right now are not your allies. They are not your true allies. They have not evolved spiritually. They are not free. They don't even exist in free societies. They themselves are slaves. But they've been bred in a way and kind of brainwashed in a way to where they think they're super privileged to even be what they're doing. But they don't understand individual human freedom. They don't understand freedom at all, really. Individual freedom, it's just something they don't recognize. They certainly don't recognize knowledge, true knowledge. So yeah, it's going to be quite important to become aware of this stuff and to become very savvy about the different kinds of manipulation that may be taking place. It's really important. I know it's difficult. There's a lot going on. And a lot of that could actually be fomented by these beings. They are actually promoting human conflict. And like with these, like say the really big commercial enterprises, the leaders of commerce in the commercial realm, they are trying to convince these people of things that are really destructive to the human family. They're really trying to convince nations and people to just drive so many wedges. They are promoting so much human conflict. And it sucks because a lot of the people that are in leadership positions, they think that this advice is coming from superior intellectual beings, even with the hybrids. Now, they might not know they're hybrids. Some of them do. The third Allies of Humanity book talks about how some people in government have become aware of this kind of intervention, and they're actually against it, and they're actively working against it. There is resistance taking place. But it's good for people in general to become aware of this, because there is such a thing as morphic resonance. The more people become aware of this, the more difficult it is for these beings to control you. If you get on that vertical path, it is much more powerful. And you have much more immunity within the mental sphere. It's much more difficult for you to be deceived and influenced, even though they're trying like hell to keep people within that lower sphere. Infinitely frustrated, infinitely angry, infinitely distracted, infinitely just spinning your wheels, infinitely in conflict. But when you go to the core, when you go to the source material of things like the Bible or the I Ching, certain other things, those things have a more pure source, or like Dharma. When you go to sources of like Vedic scripture, a lot of that stuff is coming through with direct revelation. People who have gone into such a vertical place, they've become so vertically integrated that they've transcended their conditioned mind, and they understand its place. It's about service. And they've gotten to such profound levels of that they've received. And then they give. That's how it works. You receive, you give. You receive, you give. When you're stuck in the lower spheres, it's just about getting. You don't give anything. And even getting to the place of being open to receive is a process. To be open to receive your divine inheritance, that's a process. It can take a lot of work to get there. It's not easy. It's not easy getting on that camel. It's not easy getting on that path of Gimel and going into the desert, because, like I said, getting distracted will feel like 10 times more jarring than it ever has in your life. Whereas before, you might have used distraction as a painkiller. When you start getting on this vertical path, distractions feel like a baseball bat to the head, man. Every time it happens. That's what's happening to me anyway. It's a very difficult experience, but it's worth it, and I'm not giving up. A lot is unfolding with it, with the steps to knowledge. It is so important, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's easy, but I can't overemphasize how important it is. So there's all kinds of possession. People can become ideologically possessed. Like what Jordan Peterson keeps talking about. People are ideologically possessed. It's like they've been taken over. And who knows, maybe there are entities connected to that. I feel like my family members became weak and essentially possessed by low vibrational entities. Of course, they feel as though that they haven't changed. When did this happen? Did this happen at a certain time? Or has it been like your whole life? Maybe they stayed the same and your vibration increased. Think about it like that. Because it's sort of like, okay, I never played Mass Effect, but everybody says it's amazing. On and off your entire life. Yeah. In the beginning of the video, I was talking about how you have these three levels: body, mind, spirit. With the Kabbalistic tree of life, you could look at it in terms of Asiya with Malkuth, Yetzirah with the 6 central spheres, and then like spirit, right? Spirit with Keter coming down with the cup. So we have body, mind, spirit, and it's important to get those in order. Body serves mind, mind serves spirit. Some people think it's the other way around. That we live in a spiritual welfare state and you're just given goodies for your mind, and which that can then you serve your body with just for pleasure, just to feel secure in a certain sense. But that's totally backwards. It's supposed to work the other way. And recalibrating that isn't the easiest thing in the world to do. I'm doing it. It's not easy. There's a lot of traps and snares within our mental sphere and even within the physical. Trying to get things focused only in that way, like with the Abraham Hicks stuff. Don't you want a new Ferrari? Don't you want $1 million? Don't you want a new girlfriend? Don't you want... endlessly driving things in that direction and telling you that the universe, the spiritual nature of the universe, is only here to support that cause. As if the spiritual nature of the universe is only here to support you getting shit you want on that base level. That's backwards. That's spirit serving mind, serving body. That's backwards. It's body serves mind, serves spirit. That's how it works. Now, some people have bodies that are not functioning at their full capacity. And that creates a mind that is not functioning at its full capacity, which makes it difficult to serve spirit. It makes it difficult to serve truth. That's just how it is. You know. Yes, you can have some people who are really jovial and also have terrible diets, but are also really moral. I'm not saying that's impossible. But with, you could say the frequencies we're moving into, if you want to use that word, it's going to be required to have a lot, to be way cleaner in every way. It's so important to be clean. And if people are doing drugs, and if people are eating junk food all the time, and people are drinking all the time and smoking all the time, their body is arrested because it's constantly trying to clean. You know, when you have a body that's constantly dealing with junk, it's like running around with the 7 dwarfs and there's a never-ending mess. There's a never-ending mess that your body is trying to manage. And you know what? That actually makes it difficult on your mind. Now your body isn't serving your mind very well. It's too preoccupied. You know, and it takes a long time to get from point A to point B with all kinds of things that you may be going through mentally. That even with philosophically minded people, if they could really clean up their diet and really clean up their life on that level, boy, they will be taken to levels that they never thought was possible in terms of their ability to think. You know,